Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Henderson, Shooter. And we're going to go over some charts today, a couple of other things. Of course, at the end of our presentation, please do review our disclosure. As I'm prepping for this, Nvidia beat both top and bottom and lost 4 points after the close. And actually, that has been not that much of a retrace, but quite often it's been the secondary effect on different stocks, like whether it be our CRM, Crowd, OKTA, Micron, etc., have all benefited more from robust earnings from Nvidia. And the one thing that I'd like to point out is they are experiencing huge inflation in their annual report as far as their costs, which is a potential catalyst in the wrong direction. But let me jump into the regular market recap and just go over a few things there. That's kind of going to be my tone here a little bit. So taking a look at the dollar, right now it is constructive equities because we're in between the bull and the bear line. But however, I still view this as bearish simply because I'm looking at this as our count, as our 5-wave. This is our corrective leg, which pretty much is an a leading diagonal here, which should end. So, the dollar should head back in that primary direction that we had thought that it would head up towards the 103 target. I would think it continues in that direction. However, it really depends on the Fed and how the Fed plays their hand here. And that's something I find difficult to read sometimes because the outcome isn't necessarily what we expect or we would think would be the outcome, or it's delayed in some fashion. So with that, let me jump over to TLT. Now, we have both 82 cash secured put and 83 cash secured puts because we're trying to get a little piece of this. Right now, I'm looking at it just of a bounce back to 85 is my thought. We need to get back above this 87 for me to think really bullish. I think the buybacks need to triple from where they are now for that really to push us up to that extent, or that's my thinking, right or wrong. But very constructive at this point. That's something I'm pretty confident we're going to head back towards about 86. Just trying to pull in a couple bucks on that. Jumping over to the SPY, we're still on this same path. And as we tighten here, we look at our consolidation of pricing in our leaders. I don't really see this path changing. I think this path is very accurate. I don't know that we extend to 834 here, but I would say that 790 for sure is our destiny, and that 814 is very viable that we have here on the ATR at 814.27. So until it takes out this shelf right here at this 755.92, it's as you were. Just continuing to grind higher. It's going to be tight. It's a little challenging for swing trading because the ranges aren't steep enough. We're not seeing enough of a pump to get the follow through to make any money on the premium. The only one who's making money on that premium is market maker. So even though we have huge volume in some names, if you look at the moneyness of a lot of those stocks, as an example, that moneyness, if you note, our leaders are open interest percentage changes, which is something that I lean towards. In other words, I'm looking for a volume jump in a specific call or put. And then I want to see, honestly, I want this entire moneyness box to be green, not red. And if you look at everything from Val to DKS, obviously we have multiple contracts here. They're under the water. Even XE is down 91. SMR is the only one besides mRNA and Amgen that is positive. So when that moneyness is not winning, right, that's a factor that I build into my position size or whether or not I'm going to take that swing. We just need to consider that, in our positioning. And that dynamic has been there too daggum long at this point. I'm tired of it. Oh, all right, let's look at the NASDAQ here. Now, actually very constructive. I have to admit, even though we've got this little pullback, I like this leg because now we've got our flag, so we've got a clean 1, clean 2. So, if this is a tight ascending wedge, right, then we should do something like this around 800 and reject there, which happens to be a great spot to reject, by the way. So, any pullback roughly to the base here at 687 should be chaseable long. And the now that we have Nvidia's earnings out of the way, that should be a good dynamic for stocks here. The other thing I wanted to point out is that China, even though with their onshore controls, a smaller percentage of their cash infusion is finding its way to U.S. equities, but they now have rolled out a new bailout window at $60 billion a day, which implies to me there's a lot of trouble there. So that's, now whether or not that rolls from China to the United States, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, is yet to be seen. But I think that is a positive catalyst. And at the same time, the Fed fund window, the FEMA window for BOJ, is basically gone silent. They're not drawing funds on that. However, what we did, the BOJ governor, and forgive me, I'm forgetting his name right this second, actually canceled his meeting at Jackson Hole. Now, that's not something, there's something there. Don't know what that is, whether they have decided not to stick by our side. I mean, I hope not, but that could be the case where they don't want to confront the fact that they might be planning to unwind the yen carry trade. And if that's the case, then we have much more turmoil coming. But that was something that caught my attention this week. All right, let's look at semis. Now, this morning, as we were coming into the open, I'm thinking, maybe I want to short semis into Nvidia. And it actually wouldn't have been a bad trade. It would have worked from this morning. Wouldn't necessarily have worked after the close, though, to hold overnight, because so many of the secondary names have already popped. But I think we are getting toppy here with this look. And I don't think this looks done. This particular red candle here on the weekly at that 560, or excuse me, 594, just the range of this candle really looks to me like we're going to get at least a 5 here. Either that or this is a much larger ABC structure. And, we're going to do something to this degree here and maybe pull back towards that 440, 423 range. That's just my thought on semis. I think they're weak. And, I'm going to bring in that dynamic that NVIDIA, the inflation that's coming in there. That is going to slow down some build if we have too much inflation in the semis going into these builds, because I don't know that they built in a 20% inflationary number into the hardware. So we want to be conscious of that. And, me not having any, really the only thing I have even close to semis is SpaceX, and that more is because of Terafab. That's about the closest thing I've got to semis that's on right now. And by the way, Tesla looks really good. If it wasn't pulled back today, I probably would have opened a new position there because their robot is, they're ready to go live with one of their factories as far as manufacturing those robots. And there's been great, the folks who've actually visited and walked those production lines have been thoroughly impressed. The social media posts on that have been very positive. So, looking at the dynamics there, it's still very noisy to me. I want to take a look at XLF today, just quickly. We're breaking out towards all-time highs, right? I don't see that changing, and realize the dynamics there is coming from crypto. Right. And we've now hit this little resistance here. Sold some covered calls on my common there in IBIT, just because I wanted to earn some premium while I sat there, because I was thinking we'd reject and maybe bounce off that 41. And I wanted to hold a position because the main reason is I missed most of this candle, and that kind of ticked me off. So we can call that a revenge trade. All right. So looking at gold, we're pulling back just a little bit with NVIDIA earnings. I don't think it's done. I think what this is more of a defined one, is what this ultimately ends up doing. And maybe realize that's more of an intermediate wave that I had drawn there. This is more of a minor wave structure there, which actually extends our count quite a little bit. So I'll have to come in and redraw this. And, the assumption would be this would be our intermediate wave 1, etc. I'm just going to draw it short there for a second for time constraints here. But at this point, I'm still really bullish gold. Now, silver, we're potentially a little more on maybe the undone side. We break below the body of this candle back around 60, then I'm probably going to cut and run as on my silver position, simply for that reason. And then I wanted to come and look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin, running into that same shell. Obviously, we just showed that with IBIT structure. I don't think it's done anything wrong. I think we pull back to 74. I do think that we test these highs. Now, whether or not we hold above there and we can actually continue to launch, I think that's a lot to do with regulation coming in. I just wanted to peek at crude here We got this huge flag going on here with oil. Question is, do we break down or we continue higher? And honestly, I don't know. Structurally, 65-70% of the time, anytime you get a wedge, it breaks to the positive, to the upside. So there's a very good likelihood that we have a run back towards 90 to 100. At this point, UUU is still working. It's another open position that we have. I just think this continues to grind higher. We had a number of other metals, specifically uranium and juniors. Well, actually, I wanted to bring up juniors. Let me go back to, and I wanted to compare URNJ versus URA, right? And notice that we're getting a little equilibrium between the two symbols. I mean, we definitely are in a bullish move here, so we want to be conscious of that. But I wanted to point out the juniors because I do think that's a good spot. When we get busy and price continues to move, juniors tend to do it just a little bit better. So that's what I wanted to keep in mind here. At this point, SpaceX is working where we're at. Don't plan on changing anything there. Again, I want to get to at least a 5%, likely an 8%. And if I keep hearing great news, I might even go higher than that as far as position size. All right, let's take a look at some of the names you guys wanted to look at. Good spot right here. The shelf's holding at 298 as far as TLN. This point's done nothing wrong. It's an accumulate as far as I'm concerned. I still have it flagged as a sell because it's red, on the timeline. When that ends and we have some divergence in RSI, I'll flip it green and then it'll flip over in Chartbook to accumulate. Now, DPC, I just jumped down to the 4-hour here looking at this one. I mean, it looks pretty decent. I mean, RSI is still confirming. Don't like this wick on this candle here on the 4-hour around 45. I would like it better at 42, 43 if it gets down there. However, it does break back above that wick at 45.62. We're probably going to get this impulse leg build out. Now, Addy Lab is kind of building out this wedge that we looked at. Does look a little bit, I'm going to jump down to the daily on this one. No divergence on our low. Boy, that is a messy impulse right there. We just had some divergence right here. It doesn't look done structurally to me. I mean, we're getting a little bit of a bid, probably not bad spot to cost average in, thinking that our ATR is at 219. Maybe, I don't know that we come back and test that. Reason I say that is the shelf right here at 230. I think that would hold. If not, this 213 holds. All right, taking a look at Oust. In trouble simply because we've broken this shelf here on this leg up. So this is a solid bullish rejection. Most likely cases we come back and test 27 here with this look. Still, I mean, we're flattening in RSI. So we do have a little divergence here. Weekly does not look done. I want to look at 4-hour on this one. Clean divergence here, but I don't like this price rejection here off that divergence. So we're in this flat. You can be stuck here forever, and that range is really hard to get out of there, and it dates all the way back here. Notice how tight that thing was. Best place would be a pullback to that 30.50. I mean, if you want to try and put a piece on, just realize you're going to take some heat there. We do have some divergence. I don't know of a catalyst that would motivate me to jump there, but that would be the only reason I would consider adding a position there. Poet. I mean, the only thing is we do have like a squeeze look on RSI here. I mean, on volume, excuse me. MACD is wide open. Doesn't excite me yet. We have structural weakness below this shelf. So we have this whole range down here again, which really dates back over here. So the whole shelf, we wicked right to that. So it's still holding that. When I see a broken chart, and broken, I mean, is where the staircase isn't honored. So we have the step up, the back test, the step up, the back test, step up, and then we break here. We should have held this confirming trend support down here, and we didn't. All right. So that, to me, this whole leg here is broken, right? So I don't expect it to take out these highs until we get some consolidation down. And the challenging part here is we have no back test of this. I mean, we do. This is a back test, but it really didn't test floor specifically, which would have been closer to 475 in that range. MACD rolls up. We get a little bit more of a flush on a pretty decisive candle versus an inside type hammer. There's a hammer there, no doubt. However, it's going in the wrong direction. All right, looking at Zscaler, I still like this for continuation to the upside. So, I think we do, build out at this point continue moving in that direction. It breaks below this 164.45, then obviously it probably is going to test the lows and this trend support will get tested. It's a little weaker than I'd like right now. There's a lot of names that are weaker, which is one reason you don't see me in a lot of the tech names around AI yet, is because I think we need to sort out this mess that we have with this financing and the data centers getting built in the first place, because all these moratoriums are not helping. So until that quiets down or we get some solid regulation, names like Zscaler will be taking a little heat. That's just, my thought. I don't think it's done anything wrong. I think it's just building out. And again, all it needs is one huge order, and then we're heading back to the upside. All right, RCAT, I've got the buy box a little bit lower here. My secondary box off of this fib. I'd like to see 50% of that candle, 750, before I jump back and board here, only because of this price rejection here. That's just my thought. LPath, also, again, that weakness heading to the downside. I think this is ABC structure is valid. You have A, B, C on a leg one. So then this whole leg here is A, and this is our B, and then we should get a C. So, my thought would be it'd play out something like this. I know nobody ever likes me to say this. That's structurally what I see as far as equality. So back here in this band, however, we could hold right here at 1124. That's where if we get a shot. It's still, these wicks are huge. These wicks are huge. We tested this. This was a perfect wick off. So I think if we get a flush and you get a quick wick on a candle, maybe down to the daily candle, it may be worth a buy around 11.50, $12. We get a wick like this down there, then it would be more of a decisive entry, because we do like to bounce off of these wicks. Even though sometimes it's not a response like this, it's a shallower response, it still likes to bounce off of those wicks. So you get a good wick, it probably is your tell to, hey, it's a good time to put a little piece on there. It's a good spot to add sedge. I'm not motivated in solar here. Too many issues with rare earth minerals, manufacturing, and supply chain still. So US-based solar is going to have that headwind. Then we have the inflation coming in from commodities. I don't know that it gets up and out of here, breaks back above this 33 for a while. I would say we may be stuck in this range for the next quarter, unless there's a catalyst, and we still are confirming on RSI, and the MACD is wide open. Tough to get a bead on a shallow name, but you have clear divergence here on this leg. So our confirming, our valid mound base really extends in this box. So we need to clear this box right here for us to really get bullish. Right now we're in that consolidation zone. The conditions are there. We have a confirming low, right? Lower low in price, lower low in RSI. Divergent low. Lower low in price, higher low in RSI. Got it. Conditions met. Now we go back and look at where that structure was built from. We go from that high, roughly 2247. Then we should have a mound structure. Might be just a tad bit early on this, so I want to come out. It's tough with such a shallow chart, but structurally, this will measure out. This will be if that is our one, I'm saying if that is our one, just looks shallow to me. It doesn't look complete. We would get something like this to the upside initially. But I would think that we get more of a wedge like this kind of build out, because it's got to build the momentum to get up and out of here. So I would say it comes back and tests this ledge right here, right? Does something like that, and then it breaks to the upside and then goes. So we're looking at maybe November, I would think. That's just my thought there. Looking at BABA. I like BABA for a couple reasons. One, you had huge insider buys, huge. On top of that, they are getting some, huge interest as far as their AI build. So I would suspect in the coming months, and I don't think it'll be weeks, I think it'll be months. I think we're going to hear that they have, had OpenAI or Anthropic type growth, and realize the price point, if they charge a price point similar to Anthropic or OpenAI, that's a pretty big moat for BABA that they haven't had before. So that to me is where my thought is, back to the upside. So as long as it doesn't take out this 116.76, even still, if it doesn't take out the shelf, because notice my valid mound base is down here at 112.37. Can't go below there. Goes below there, it invalidates the mound base. All right, cut and draw. So that's your line in the sand. Outside of that, I think we need to build a position on this, provided our relationship with China doesn't deteriorate more than it already is. And it looks like it is. But still, that doesn't mean, if you go and look at Asia, it doesn't look the same as the United States. They have some of the lowest interest rates they've had in history. They just don't have the consumption vehicle that the United States has. However, they're their Silk Road thing is working. I mean, so if we have any kind of recovery in the consumer, it will show up in BABA. But now we have the AI catalyst there that we didn't have before, which is why I like that. Galaxy, it's an accumulator. It's right here. This thing's flying. It's working. Let's look at the 1 day, drill it down just a little bit, get where we are. So, we don't really have divergence on this leg. We have divergence here. No divergence on this leg. So, I mean, we still could put in a 3 here, drawing a speed line from our lows. That slope would be down around 1567. However, it's already running. It takes out, first shelf it needs to take out a wick right to it, 25.45. Then that breakout is going to take us back to 31. Then that 31 takes us to the high at 36. And right now I'm calling for about 39, 34 before we get any kind of pullback as far as that looks. So structurally, I like Galaxy here. BMNR just ran with the Riot news and the other miners news on switching to Bitcoin. Boy, I nailed that one. Didn't have a right position on it, but my thesis was there that their power structure just is something we could not exclude. It was much more profitable to run AI data centers versus crypto mining. So, I mean, that's what we see the change happening here. Let me come out to the weekly, give you a visual on where we're going. Maybe I need to go back to the 4 hour. I don't see a clear, when you have these tight breakouts, a nice solid trend here. So I'd have to call that R1. What that does is it gives us distance. So I'd have to call this R1. This would be our correction. So 3 should be similar in distance and line. So that would put us up towards this 27 number. We've totally taken out the ATRs from this. So this is clearly mound 1. We're going to get a mound 3. I would say 27 is its destiny short term. So I wanted to come in and look at a few photonic, because I think this reemerges as an AI theme. I think this is one of the first areas that recover, and Cohere is one of those names that I like here on this base. I'm actually going to remove that ABC on that and say we're looking at that leading diagonal, because we have taken out the wick or the body of this candle at 254.96 or 295, sorry. I was looking at the wrong line, 288.67. We take out this 299.08, it kind of confirms that leg to the upside. We should test all-time highs around 436. But if there's other names in photonics that you want me to look at, or, I like the sector for a thesis to come back out of this AI move that we're in, because I think it would, just like DRAM, it is a mover. It's a little late for us to chase DRAM, especially with these types of elevations. And if we are having the cost inflation like Nvidia revealed today, then that may become an issue for us. But that's pretty much what I have, folks. Great trading. Until next time.